Gonna give you this. And then, John, are you ready?
I am. Am I a co-host?
I don't know, but you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, great. Thanks. Got a little bit of a feedback from something here, but I think that's better. Okay, yeah, as Amy said, my name is Jon Wright, New York Syracuse chapter, and I've been around since 2018. Delivered our first bed in October, I think, of 2018, and delivered a couple since then. I like to look at this as a subject matter experience more than expert. So we've got a bit of experience under our belts here in Syracuse. So the material we're going to cover is 15-20 minutes, and then we'll take questions about just about anything. And the material that we're looking at is stuff that I've gotten questions about or had conversations with chapter presidents or other people that do vetting and delivery setup, and just said, hey, what about this? What about that? What about this? So some ideas for you, maybe some things that are useful. The reality of SHP is well, one of my favorite TV shows was Washington Spies. And there's a great line that General Washington uses that's a saying from Ireland. Many mickle makes a muckle. And basically that just means that a whole lot of little things make a big thing. And SHP is a lot like that. I think a whole lot of little things make the big thing, the international thing that SHP is. But within all those little things, there are a lot of differences, and there are a lot of differences in region and culture that we may see in cities, maybe size, the activity level of each chapter. So that being said, some of the stuff that we're going to talk about tonight may not fit really easily into yours, but you may be able to still come up with some ideas from what we discuss to come up with some better ways of doing things, or to keep things on the rails, as they say. One other thing that I'd like to mention, and this goes without saying, but I think it's important. One of my favorite musicals is Horton Hears a Who, and there's a line from that I like to steal and just say, a chapter is a chapter, no matter how small. I don't care how many beds you delivered. The kid that you deliver a bed to doesn't care how many beds you've delivered. You're giving them a bed. So if sometimes you hear of chapters that are doing big things, it doesn't matter. Do what you do and do it well. And that's what the goal of this SME night is to just help you do well what it is you're doing. So with that, let's just jump right in. The first thing I thought we'd take a quick look at is vetting. We're not really going to talk about delivery too much tonight. Maybe we'll do that another time, but tonight we're just going to talk about a couple things. And the first thing I'd like to talk about is vetting. And one of the things that we bump into from time to time, and I've bumped into with conversation, and I should mention that my wife, Libby Wright, is also on here, and I have to give her credit, because in reality, she does all the work of the chapter in terms of vetting and delivery setup. I listen in and know what she's doing, but in many ways, she's really the one with more experience. She just doesn't necessarily have the ability to get in front of people and go, hi, like I do. So therefore, I'm the one doing this. But so one of the things we like to look at is defining parameters of your vetting. And by the way, there is a vetting manual, delivery and vetting best practices manual. It's been under review for what, 9 months now, Amy? I think 8 months. I don't know.
Hey, JP's on here. Hey, JP.
Probably too long.
Senior management.
Push that along there.
Sorry, JP, I threw you under the bus.
All right. That's all right.
But there is a manual coming, and I think once it's out, you guys you'll be able to reference that, and a fair amount of what we're going to talk about tonight, I think, will be part of that as well. So when I talk about defining your parameters and defining things, define contact measures and stick with these things. For example, the how you contact people, and then the what you say to them when you contact them. So when you're making a call to do a delivery, I think it's really important initially, particularly young chapters, a new chapter starting out, or maybe if you're just starting out and you've taken over the vetting job from someone else, make a checklist. Make a checklist of the things that you're going to use to communicate with people. We have many options for communication. We initially deal with these people via an email in the Salesforce system. They get an email back to them that says, hey, we've got your application. But usually from that point in time, we go off and we either make phone calls or sometimes we text. Use all three of those things when you're contacting people, and define what you're going to do in terms of contact. You're going to make one phone call, and if they don't answer the phone, or if their voicemail is full, you're going to send them one text message. And if you don't get a reply to that text message, maybe you're going to send them one email. And if they don't reply to the email, you're going to close the case, unable to contact client. Now, I'm not suggesting those are the parameters you're using. I'm just saying define what your parameters are and stick to them. Maybe you make 3 attempts at a phone call, 3 attempts at a text message, and 3 emails. Whatever they are, figure them out, write them down, and try to be consistent with that. One thing that we found here in Syracuse is that it's a small city with a very large community and moms groups and that type of thing. People get on Facebook, and so people will compare notes. And so the consistency, I think, is important, particularly if you're in an urban environment, for making sure that if you're going to text somebody, text them 2 or 3 times, and then you're going to give up. You're going to move on to this and move on to that. Use the notes section in Salesforce when you're doing this. It's important to keep track of notes, and that way other people can pick up and look at what you're doing. The other thing that I think is important for a checklist and to define the way you communicate with people is the information. Make a checklist of the various things that you want to make sure you tell the client when you're talking to them about scheduling a delivery. Telling them, hey, you need to make sure the rooms are cleared. Telling them, what the delivery information. We will deliver on Saturday morning. Okay. In Syracuse here, we have a requirement where we tell them that we will call them or text them Friday night or Saturday morning. If they don't respond, we will not just knock on their door. So define those things, figure out what works for you. And it may be a work in progress. You may start out, with some things that you're convinced you need to tell the client, and other things you're not. There's some soft things that you can tell the client, some things that aren't like hard and fast rules as to how you want to handle the delivery. Soft thing might be just letting them know simply, hey, we're all volunteers here. I tell you, we started doing that in our constant contact with clients, letting them know that we're volunteers, because what we found out was a lot of them thought that we were either a state agency or we were some agency that was funded by the state. And we find that people don't take anywhere near as much advantage of us, or seem to take less advantage of us, because they find out that we're all volunteers and that it's all donated materials. So those are just things that you can think about when you're vetting. And again, make your own list up of the things that you want to clearly communicate to the client. And again, be consistent, so that you're telling each client that you contact to schedule delivery, you're telling them the same thing. It's just a good way of doing it. The next thing I'd like to talk about is kind of more of a, well, I guess we could call this a tease, maybe, in a sense. We've learned to use Google Voice, and very well. It's worked very well for us. There are a couple considerations that you want to use if you talk about using your personal cell phone. There's some downsides to using a personal cell phone when making phone calls, and I'm not saying you can't. Don't take me the wrong way. Use your personal cell phone if that's what you're comfortable doing. But there are some downsides. The first one that comes to my mind is that if you move from the position you're in as delivery or vetting coordinator, or if you're a CP and you're doing, there are probably a lot of CPs on that are, doing all of this. So whether you're, a volunteer doing it on the side, or whether you're a CP, it's not a matter of if you leave the organization, it's just a matter of when. So if you've used your personal cell phone to make all these contacts with these clients, or your number gets out in the environment, the local community, as this is the people that can give you a bed, and you start getting phone calls, when you leave, your personal cell phone may become a bit of a problem, where people continue to contact you or text you, and you're constantly saying, hey, I don't do that anymore, here's the new number, that type of thing. So that's one downside to using your personal cell. Another thing that I've kind of already alluded to is if the number gets out there, we use 2 Google Voice numbers here in Syracuse, and people have actually learned them. We get calls fairly regularly now. I got your number from a friend, or so-and-so, or my caseworker gave me your number. And because they're Google Voice numbers, at some point in time, we could transfer them over to the new person. Google Voice numbers can be transferred to other phone numbers. So the goal here is to not show you everything there is to do with Google Voice, or even give you instructions on how to set it up and use it. But the goal is to just let you see what's capable, and then either hopefully maybe you have a niece or a nephew or a grandson or a child, somebody who can come alongside and help you if you don't have the skills, or if necessary, reach out to me, and we'll set something up, and I'll try and get you squared away with a Google Voice number. The other thing with using a personal number is your voicemail can fill up, your texting can fill up pretty quickly. And then it becomes, scrolling through a bunch of different stuff to try and see exactly what's going on. So on the screen, I've shared our Google Voice number. This is one of the 2 voice numbers. And you can see here on the text, those of you who aren't on phones. And by the way, I should mention that I realize that a lot of people are very phone centric when it comes to doing the work of vetting and delivery scheduling. And a lot of people are probably very, PC centric. Personally, if I had to use the phone, I'd go crazy, but that's just me. So you can do this on a phone. You can also do this on a PC. It works the same either way. It's just a different size screen, and some of the controls are a little different. But for the sake of this discussion, we're going to look at the PC version of Google Voice. So you can text, you can call, and you can actually get voicemail to Google Voice. This is currently the text mode that you're looking at, and you can just see here. I had some communication with this phone number back on December 23rd. They texted me because they have my number. They have this number, and they say, "Hey, try calling to confirm the appointment." And okay, this text confirms. We let them know that we're good. Make sure the room is clear, ready to be assembled, etc. Thank you. And this clear communication with the client, with the recipient of the beds, so that we know they're still on board with us showing up at their door and receiving beds. Another thing we did. I had somebody call me and say, "How do I take my beds apart?" And I'm sure this is common. Anybody that's been delivering beds for a couple of years has probably gotten at least a few contacts where, how do we take the beds apart? Well, in this case, I said, "What's your cell number?" And because they didn't know what a ratchet wrench was. They had no idea what the wrench looked like. I went online real quick, and I work in IT, so I have some skills, but I found a picture. I added the 1/2-inch socket to the picture. I sent it to them on their phone, and now they have their information on their phone of exactly what they need in order to take the bed apart if they want to move it. Again, you can make calls from your computer if you want to. You do have to tie Google Voice to a phone, but you can make calls from your computer, and it's certainly an option. You also can get voicemail. One of the beautiful things about voicemail is, depending on the quality of the connection, you can actually get a transcript of the voicemail on the screen, so that you can see exactly what their voicemail was before you play it, and you can find out exactly what's going on with Google Voice. So again, the object here is to not give you a complete run through of how to do Google Voice, but rather just to say, hey, if you're concerned about your personal cell phone and you think this is something for you, look into it. Maybe find somebody who can help you. There is Google has help pages. You can just do a Google search of Google Voice setup, and this page runs you through it, answers a lot of questions. It's not that difficult. I won't say that it's simple, but it's not that difficult, and it's certainly something that I think is worth exploring. So just give that some thought. Again, it does need to be associated with an existing cell phone. It has to be associated with a Google account. Now, sadly, I shouldn't say sadly, Google does a lot of really nice things for nonprofits in terms of not charging them any money. One of the things they do charge money for is Google Voice. So the current status of the shpbeds.org email accounts is that you cannot attach a Google Voice account to that. Whether that changes down the road or not, I don't know. That's far above my pay grade or my level. But you can just simply create a Gmail account and associate a Google Voice with that Gmail account. In our case, when we first started out, we actually created shpsyracuse@gmail.com and used that strictly for Google Voice. So we didn't use it for any communication because we had SHP Beds accounts for emailing. We only use that as the Google Voice accounts. I realize there's a lot of information. Again, it's mostly meant as, I think, as a teaser for you to just go, hey, maybe we should look into that and see whether that's something that would be worthwhile. I would strongly recommend that you don't use a personal account for Google Voice, for the same reason that, if you can avoid using your cell phone or eventually move off of using your cell phone, you're probably just going to be better off.
Since I'm already the bad guy tonight for not having the delivery document done yet, you really shouldn't. We don't want people to be buying cell phones, and there's just a lot of questions IRS wise about things like that. So Google Voice is really key.
And I think the plan, JP, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but I think the plan is to try and support this more. But those of you who can get on it and find that niece or nephew or son or whoever, or if you need help, or just read about it and figure it out. Or again, if you have to contact me, I'm still working full time for another 6-8 months. Once I'm retired, I'm more than happy to help people with this type of stuff on whatever basis I can to provide that. I got into SHP to give kids beds, and the fact that I can help people do that across the country, that's just a win-win for me. So just makes it all the better. So again, mostly just to say, hey, give it some thought and see about exploring it. So the next thing I'd like to just take a look at is another thing that we use, and it's another Google product. I don't work for Google, just so you know. I work for Syracuse University in IT, but I'm just going to talk about one other thing with Google, and that is their Google Maps and Google Street View. Google Maps and Street View are some pretty good things that we use again here in Syracuse, and I know some other chapters do too as well. Street View, for example, if you make an evening delivery, or if you're not sure exactly what, where you're going, if you do Street View and you just simply go to Google Maps, you put an address in, you'll notice up on the left-hand side that you'll see a picture. If you click on the picture, you're now looking at the house that you're delivering to. Okay. And we use this, believe it or not, sometimes when we make phone calls, because we want to communicate to our delivery team leads what door it is, maybe what color the house is, to give them as much information as we possibly can so that they can make a successful, safe delivery. Syracuse is the leading child poverty city in the nation of large cities. So there's a fair amount of poverty, and there's some areas in the city where we just want to be have as safe a posture as we possibly can. This enables us to have a very safe posture going into the city. I have actually used it on some rural deliveries because we cover a big area, where I just wanted to know whether it was a trailer or whether it was a house or what it was. And so I've actually gone into the Street View of Google Maps and just taken a quick look just to go, okay, so when I'm driving down the road, I go, oh, that's what I saw on the screen. So whether you use this for vetting and just try to do, hey, okay, so is that the left-hand door of your house, or is that the door that's off the porch? When you're talking to people and you're scheduling the deliveries, it's a useful tool to get that information and to make sure it's correct. And also you can let your delivery team leads know that if they want to use Google Maps, that they can do that, and just simply provide them with an opportunity, helping them be, again, in our circumstances, it kind of helps them be safe, but it also helps quick. You don't knock on the wrong doors, and accidentally wake people up at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning that you don't want to wake up, or whatever the confines of your particular delivery circumstances are. The other thing we use it for is we use it for a delivery setup map. So this is pretty neat. If you're logged into, and you can do this from any Google account, you can do this from your SHP account. If you go to mymaps.com, or mymaps.google.com rather, it brings you to, why is my internet not working suddenly? There we go. It brings you to this page, and you can actually create maps. And so this is an account that I use, and my wife has one that has more maps in it. But for the sake of demonstration, this is what we kind of use for delivery setup. Because we're more of an urban environment, we do have some rural deliveries, but most of our deliveries, probably 80 to 85%, are within the city limits of the Syracuse. We can go in and we can simply type an address, 309 James Street. It shows up on the map, okay? And we can add it to the map. And then we can look and go, okay, I want to give Team A these 3 deliveries because they're very close to each other. I wouldn't want to give Team A this delivery and then this delivery way down here. And then, so this allows us to schedule deliveries in a local area. So if you have more than one team going out, or even if you only have one team going out and you want to just make sure that you're keeping them in a reasonable driving distance, gas prices being what they are, it's just a way to help your delivery teams, stay focused and stay in one place. The last thing I'd like to just show you real quick here, hang on a second, if I can find it. Let's go back to this. We use this during our marketing days when we were just starting up. You can leave these addresses, you can create what we called it as a delivery dates. And this is, you can help your social media person maybe. So you can actually plot every delivery. Now you have to be careful because you don't want to do this so granularly. Is that a word, granularly? You don't want to do this with so much granularity that people could determine the addresses. But boy, we posted these on Facebook and they were really effective in letting people see what we were doing and how we were delivering. We would post one, and then the next week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whenever there was a significant enough change, we would cut and paste and post another one. So this is another reason we always obviously eliminated this left-hand column where all these addresses were, and we only took the section with the dots, but we were able to really promote it. So in addition to providing location for your delivery team people and doing that, if you keep track of this, you can use this for another purpose, and that is to provide maybe a little bit of a hey, here's what we're doing, community. Here, here's where our deliveries are going. And again, not specific enough so that they could actually know where you're going, but certainly by looking at this map, you can see. And this happens to be, I think the brown was 2020, and I think the blue was 2021. And that's just in Syracuse for us. But as I said, we cover fairly rural areas as well. So in addition to just being able to help delivery team leads know where they're going and what the house looks like, this is another effective way of doing that. All right, so that's enough of that. Weight limits. This was mentioned in the thing that Amy sent out, because we've had a couple questions of this, and this is another thing that's under development or being evaluated by people in on the build end of it, as well as some other places. Right now, it's 250 pounds is pretty much what we determined to be the maximum weight. Obviously, we want you to use some common sense. I don't think I'd put a 250-pound kid on a top bunk. I might on a bottom bunk, I might put some extra slats in there, but I think that would be, that would be the exception. We don't run into this very often here in Syracuse, but we do occasionally. So use your judgment. One thing that's also a good idea, and we use this with other aspects of our vetting when we're talking to people and they're hemming or hawing about whether they need a bed. Sometimes we'll bounce the question back to the client. We'll bounce the question back to the person making the request. And in this case with bedding, we had one where I think it was a 240 or 250 pound young man, 13-year-old, but also had a 9-year-old daughter that we're delivering a bed to. And it was real simple. I said to the mom, I said, well, look, we'll bring both beds. We'll build the one for the daughter. You can take a look at it. And if you think, this is something that's appropriate for your son, then we'll build and leave the other one. If you don't think it is, then you're not taking a bed away from another child that we could deliver a bed to. And the end result was she made the decision that it really wasn't appropriate for her son, and we didn't deliver her son a bed. And so we basically kind of threw the question back at her and let them decide. We've done this on occasion in other vetting circumstances where, well, they had beds, but they're broken. Well, okay, I'm sitting in my house talking to somebody on the phone. How do I know what broken means, right? We don't know, define broken. And so again, we throw it back to the client. We say, well, we have 80 kids on a waiting list. A lot of these kids don't have any beds. If you think the circumstances are such that beds are broken enough to warrant a bed, let us know and we'll deliver them. And I'll tell you, a fair number of times they've said, no, we'll wait, and we tell them, hey, the minute the beds are totally unrepairable, let us know and we'll deliver fairly quickly. So you can just throw that back to the client. What?
Or unsafe.
Yeah, or unsafe, unsafe beds, obviously, that type of thing. So last thing, and then we'll throw this open to some questions for you, is I just want to talk about life balance. And this is something that I don't know that I've ever heard it discussed, but it's something that I think is important to consider. And whether you're a chapter president doing vetting and delivery, or whether you're somebody who's volunteered to do it and just helping a chapter out, whatever that circumstance is. Sometimes we hear some really messy stories, and we hear some things that are really difficult. We delivered to a 13-year-old girl who was the victim of a mom's boyfriend in her own bed, and so we delivered a bed to her. She had 2 kids. They didn't really need beds, but in order to make the young lady not feel like the only reason she got a bed, we gave the whole family beds, just to provide that blanket, so that it wasn't just, oh, I got a bed because of what happened. We've gotten a couple times, we've gotten calls where people have said, hey, you're supposed to come bring us beds on Saturday, but we're now homeless, and so we don't need the beds. So stuff like that, it can weigh on you, and it can without you even really realizing it, things start to drag you down. So a couple recommendations for you. Number one, don't vet in a vacuum. If you have a husband or wife or a partner, maybe a good friend, don't reveal specifics. Don't talk names, don't talk streets, addresses, or anything like that. But if something really bugs you, share it with somebody. Sometimes just getting the opportunity to tell somebody about something that you struggled with emotionally, just telling that and explaining that to somebody can provide some relief and give you an opportunity to take some of that weight off of your shoulders. The other thing I'd like to recommend you do is remember the good. If you can, if you're just a delivery vetting person and you're not really ever going on deliveries, Go to the Facebook page, find pictures of the kids that are getting beds. Maybe print them out, put them up on your wall. Make it a screen background of your computer or your phone. Give yourself the opportunity to remember that in addition to the messes that we hear about from time to time, give yourself the opportunity to know that we're also still doing an awful lot of good for an awful lot of kids, to provide that balance of up and down. And then the last thing is if you need to walk away, let the chapter president know, or let somebody else know that hey, you need to take a break from doing the vetting. You need to take a break from making the calls. And there's no shame in that. Don't feel like you can't you can't say, hey, in 2 or 3 weeks we need to find somebody, or a month and a half, or whatever it is. Schedule it out so that there's no real impact. But if you need to walk away and take a break, make sure that you do that. Some chapters share the responsibility. We tried that here in Syracuse. It's really hard with the way we do business, but some chapters do share the responsibility of vetting to try and provide that balance of life. So that's really all I have for you. I hope some of that was helpful, and happy to entertain questions. Would like to say, if you do have a question, unmute yourself, ask your question, and then remute if you could. And we'll do our best. Anything in the chat, Amy, that you think I can address?
I think stuff, if we feel like your question in the chat wasn't answered yet, ask it again. What may be helpful is you can, down at the bottom, you can raise your hand. Actually, I think it's on your picture. No, I can't find it. Now maybe I'm lying.
Yeah, I see a couple things.
This is
Okay.
Patty Kurtz in Dawsonville.
Okay.
This is, thanks so much for this training. This is wonderful. And especially thanks, John. I grew up in Camillus, so it was nice to see Camillus show up on the map as you were zooming in and out of the Syracuse area. Recently, we had a applicant who had bed bugs brought into the house by a foster child, and she was requesting 2 beds. What is the procedure for when the house has had bed bugs in it?
Yeah, I think to some degree it's up to the chapter, but I'll say this: I think that sadly bed bugs could be brought into the house a day after we deliver beds. I mean, that's just a fact, right? I mean, we have no control over that. So I think what we look at is being proactive in terms of not putting a bed in a house that has bed bugs. Some chapters require that a certificate of extermination prior to that. In other words, they want proof that that's done. Again, I think I would fall back to more of hey, talking to the client, the last thing we want to do is bring bed bugs in or bring beds in and have them useless to you in a week or 2 or 3 because of an infestation. Syracuse has a significant problem with it, and I guess some of my answer would also depend on what the bandwidth of the chapter is in terms of being able to provide additional beds. We don't take beds back anymore. We used to, but that changed recently. I hope everybody saw that, and primarily because of bed bugs. But I think if you have the bandwidth and they can go back and just fill out an application and get back in a line if they have one, I would just deliver them beds. I would give them beds. Again, pretty much get an assurance though that the problem has been mitigated.
Yeah, I'd say the SHP standard is that you don't do them immediately after they've had bed bugs, because it's just going to ruin the beds, right? So I think quite a few chapters say that they need to have had whatever the treatment looks like, 3 treatments, I think, or something, and a certain amount of time. We kind of leave that up to you, other than to be super cautious that you're not delivering a bed that's going to be ruined quickly. So
No, that's another good thing to
Right.
keep in mind just in general when you're in houses, because you don't know if they've got bed bugs or not. Think about what you're touching. You're putting your tool bag down. You're kneeling on the floor, crawling around on the floor. Just be conscious about what you might be taking back as well.
Hang your coats on the door. Don't put
Hang
your
your coats
coats
on
on
the
the floor.
door.
Yeah, and a lot of that's covered in the soon to be released manual.
It is.
on
Thank
the
you.
bed bugs, we don't, if you ever have someone contact you saying that we brought them bed bugs, you can confidently tell them we did not.
You did not.
We dip our beds in vinegar. We bring new, this is part of the reason we only bring new bedding, new mattresses,
Right.
all of that stuff. You can confidently tell people it did not come from us.
And there was a question about, we should only be delivering complete beds, no mattresses, no
Right.
frames, no pieces, beds, mattresses, and bedding.
I thought I
That's
saw
one
a hand up.
reason that people sometimes ask, well, I've got 8-inch mattresses, I got them for free. That's great, and you can use those on a single bed only, when it's just a single bed delivered. I know it sounds a little strong, but there's nothing to keep Big Brother from taking that nice 8-inch mattress, putting it on the top bunk, eliminating their gap between the safety rail and the CPSC requirements, hurting themselves, and we delivered the mattress. So yeah, we deliver full beds and mattress and bedding,
And
please.
I think along those same lines, if I ever have a family who says, oh, we just need a frame or we just need a mattress or something like that. When I've done the vetting and I feel like the need is real there and I have the inventory to bring a bed, I will tell them, pass that frame along to someone else who may need it, and I'm going to bring a full bed for your kids.
Yeah, and it does depend on your bandwidth of your chapter, whether you can
Yes.
or not. Obviously, that's a question. So a couple things in chat I'm seeing, but I also thought I saw a hand of somebody here. Maybe
Bess has her hand up.
Yes, I've got a question about asking the financial need, like how much do we ask? How much do
We
we
don't.
we
Zero,
just don't ask at all?
correct.
So this is what I will tell you. We call it gut vetting. That's
Okay.
kind of what people, say. You're going to talk to them. You're going to fill out the situation. I personally don't text to vet. I talk to every person.
Yes,
No, I
yes.
agree.
I think that's important, but we want to say yes. If you get to a house and there's obviously the situation's not what you thought it was, you don't have to leave a bed. But I would say in all these situations to remember that adult choices and adult problems aren't their kids' fault.
Right.
So if you get there and maybe if you feel like they're spending their money where you wouldn't spend it and their kids are sleeping on the floor, if the kids have need, then I would leave a bed.
Okay, that makes me feel so much better because that's the way I like it.
Yes.
Thank
Tess,
you.
Tess, again, you can gently push back with those concepts of we're all volunteers. This is all donated material. You can use that to push back. And I think 9 times out of 10, if the need is not real, 9 times out of 10, the person's going to go, okay, we'll hold off or we'll wait until we absolutely need. I think that's also an effective tool to use for,
Well-
and then again, in a very nice way, you're
Yeah.
just informing them the truth. We are all volunteers. This is all donated, that type of thing. And doing it in a way where you're letting them know that, and tell them if you have a waiting list, we have 50 other children on a waiting list right now. All those things add up in people's minds. Most of the time, I think you'll find that they'll back off if they truly don't need a bed.
Yeah, I can usually tell by the neighborhood where they live and everything what they need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although
Okay.
I
That's
have
important.
delivered in my neighborhood,
Yeah.
a very solidly middle class where the family was making rent in a house, but they had very little inside the house. So you just never know. It's
Okay.
Tom,
Delivered in
what do
my
you do?
neighborhood with
Thank you.
grandmas that have taken custody of their grandkids and on a fixed income. So
Yep.
they have a nice house, but she can't afford 3 new kids in her fixed income.
Yeah, we see that.
Not a socioeconomic thing.
I see a couple
Yeah.
of questions about what happens to the request if you're closed. There's nothing to keep you from, when you open back up, they will not automatically roll over, but you can go peruse that closed no application box on your chapter portal. And if you so choose, you simply change the status of them from closed to a new application and process them if you so choose.
And you can do it in mass also.
You can do it in mass.
John, we got a question about reporting unsafe situations. Do you want to take that one?
This is a hard one. First off, if you're a mandatory reporter in your state, then you have no, there's nothing to discuss. You have to report that. Anybody who's delivered a couple times probably has been in a circumstance where you really just felt like, you had to open your mouth and say something. I think in Syracuse, I think we've had 5 instances where we've reported, maybe 6. It's a judgment call. Yeah, it really is. If you see clearly things are unsafe to children and clearly going to, cause harm, then to me, there's just no question you have to do that. We have used in Syracuse, the police, and you can look into this in your area. The police do what they call a safety check, where it's not human services or child services going in, it's the police going in. And what that does is the police then see, and the police become the reporters, and it puts SHP at a little bit of a distance. It's a difficult circumstance because you don't want to be known as the people who are, reporting everybody, because your bed requests will dry up and then you won't be able to help anybody. By the same token, you don't want to walk by things that are clearly situations that aren't safe for children or dangerous for children or unhealthy for children. It's a tough call. There's no black and white here. It's a gray area. I would suggest if you have questions, get a hold of your RSL or CSL, or if you want to get a hold of me or even Amy probably would be able to help you walk you through that. Err on the side of reporting rather than the side of not reporting. I guess that's my advice.
Yeah, and the SHP, our stance is if you see a situation where it is clear that kids are not safe, please, by all means, report. That's why we're all here, right? In my chapter, we've been around for a long time. I've reported one time. There were obvious drug paraphernalia in the home, which is crazy to me because they knew I was coming. There have been other times that I might have, but we were there because child services was already involved. So, but yes, we're all there for the kids and to take care of the kids, right? So by all means, if you see a situation where it's obvious the kids are not safe, absolutely report it. You can let us know if you want to, so that we can help you out, but yeah.
Back to John's point, just because it's not kept to what we might hold for our standards. Yeah. I think probably, we could, for filth, you could probably report 90% of the houses you're in. So, if it's obviously a safety issue, then yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Tom's got his hand up there.
Yes.
Louisville.
Yeah, Tom's had his hand up for a while. Go ahead, Tom.
Yes, Tom from Louisville. I don't want to open the door to a bunch of stories because I know we've all got millions of them, but this one does apply to vetting. I had a delivery recently where I spoke to the mom the evening before, told her we would be arriving the next day between 4 and 6 p.m. Be sure that an adult would be there. She assured me that there would be an adult there. Get there, knock on the door, call the phone number, nothing, can't get hold of anybody. So we leave. I called back the next day to see what happened. And she said, well, you said between 4 and 6 p.m. I was there at 5:30. I got there at 4 o'clock.
Yeah. Then we can reschedule you.
Yeah.
I did it
And
once.
that is the standard.
You give me one more chance.
It's
Yeah,
like the
an
case.
adult has to be there.
Yeah.
And I, the question that I get asked fairly often is 18 or 21. I understood it was to be 18. Is that still what we're using for an adult standard?
He was an adult.
Okay, that's what I just want to make sure. Yeah. So, any other questions? Michael Benson's got a question. Oh, Drew, sorry, you were first. Go ahead, Drew. You're not hearing you.
Oh, we can't hear you, Drew.
I like that he leaned in like it was going to get louder.
I know it doesn't look like you're muted, but your sound's not working.
Maybe write it in chat.
Yeah, maybe type it and I'll ask it if we can't figure that out.
So a couple of questions in chat while Drew's working on that. Is there an age that's appropriate for a top bunk? We deliver to kids ages 3 to 17. Size and weight would really be the only consideration where I think you would look at that. Little kids, that's a judgment call that I think the family makes, as to whether a 5-year-old can sleep in a top bunk. I don't think SHP has any guidelines for that I'm aware of at any rate. So.
Yeah.
Can please come inside for a home safety check? Certainly. Yeah, again, that's a great way to avoid being ID'd as the person reporting. And again, that's not to say that you don't want to report and that you shouldn't report to social services if need be. But we had a case once where we had a delivery and we called and mommy's not home. And it's a little 5 or 7 year old boy. And, you know, we immediately called the police and said, hey, we were supposed to deliver a bed to this house. We're only getting children on the phone saying mommy's not home. They went over and did a safety check. In that case, the mother, I think, was grateful. We were lucky, but police usually will do a safety check for you in a circumstance like that. Be prepared if you call them, have the details, have specifics. You know, don't call and say, we think there's a problem. Give them reasons why you think they should go. Don't assume that they're going to read your mind, because they probably won't. So
Drew put in here that he's a mandated reporter, and as a standard, it has to be clear to him that a kid is being neglected or abused. So
Yeah.
that it's kind of that same thing JP said. They may not keep the house to the same cleanliness standards as you, or some of those things like that, but so kind of have to use your judgment call there.
Joe, question. Joe Genovese.
Well, I appreciate that it is a judgment call in a lot of cases, and I would just encourage us as we put the guidelines together, John, that on the reporting situation, that we consider providing chapters with some guidelines. Because if it's a judgment case, I think we have to realize we all have different judgment. We all have different life experiences. I'm not trained in social services, but I've learned an awful lot in 4 years. I still would like some guidelines from SHQ on that judgment call. I think it would help all of us.
Difficulty with that, it absolutely. And Joe, were you at the leadership conference in Boise when we had the lady come in from Idaho Social Services?
It was several years ago. Yeah.
A couple of years back. The part of the problem we have too is we're in 44 out of 50 states, and a lot of the state requirements. Idaho, for instance, if you're 18, you're a mandated reporter, as I understand it. So it's to find there will be no single fit rule, but I think we've got to maybe look into somewhere where we can get some basic guidelines. But
well, without making this too complicated, I mean, we have a great relationship in Phoenix with the Department of Child Safety and Child Protective Services. I could send a member of our team to get some guidelines from them, and we can make it as local as it needs to be. But we're not. I'm just concerned about judgment without guidelines.
And I think that's really where the manual, the best practices manual that we wrote went. Get with your state and local agencies. Most of us have already had contact with social services agencies. So we have people that we can just, you know, they're people I know by name in social services where I can say, hey, you know, so building that relationship with those, you know, government social service organizations is key. Getting information from them directly is key. Asking them opinions, getting their guidance is key, because every state and even some municipalities vary in terms of you know, in terms of who a reporter is and certain levels. I get where you're coming from, but I think it's going to be hard to do on a national level other than say, get with your local people, contact your local social services orgs and get with them. And if this is something that you're concerned about, nail it down with them and get with them and find that information out. So it sounds like a cop out of an answer. I understand. It really does. It sounds like I'm going, that's not my problem. But you know, to be truthful, that's what it is. So
Thank you.
Matt, a question?
Yeah. All right.
So it is Amber. Hi, Matt.
Hey guys, thanks for the calls. Helpful. We did some nice work a few months ago with a local community services organization that connected us with, let's call it like 10 or 15 families, and they've got 2 requested beds who had a need, and that's really, really helpful for us. We took a lot of coaching early on to manage our pipeline. Right, we're a chapter with limited resources, like everyone, and we don't want to be inundated. We got 3 or 4 million people right around us, and we don't want to get swamped with an absurd amount of requests. So working with these folks is spectacular. They actually flooded us themselves a little bit, and they got ahead of us, and we were struggling to keep up with the kind of information flow around. So what they did was they had cases for each family who they were helping for a variety of reasons, only one aspect of which was a bed, right? So then when we partnered, so to speak, they'd get a bed request into us, and we'd go do the delivery and so forth. to fast forward the story and get to the question, we had problems when families would be saying, hey, I sent my request in, where's my bed, right? And so the communication flow would go back through that organization, and that's all fine. We didn't have a way to communicate with them. And they said, hey, can we figure out a way to do this, apart from phones or whatever else? What they were kind of getting towards, and what I would like to do, but asking this question on this call is really handy. I could set up a Google Sheet share thing with them with their requests that they processed. Now, they are not SHP people, right? And so we don't send data out. And I wouldn't just dump data out of Salesforce. I've got the sort of data skills to do some of this stuff. But can I make the assumption that idea is doable? The data came from them initially. It's their requests into SHP's Salesforce, and I would be communicating back to them, that we reached out to this family, or that they haven't yet returned their electronic identification form, or whatever the status is in the workflow. How does that fly with everyone? How does that work?
I don't know that it's not impossible, Matt, but I'd like to discuss it with the other Matt and just make sure that you're right, it's their data, but that we're keeping it within this, our server and their server. I don't know why you couldn't do that, but let's run it past Matt and make sure that you and I are thinking the same way he is. I don't know why if the requests are all coming from them, they've got the data, right? But that's a good question.
JP, I think we would actually, Matt will probably tell you we can't do that based on we become the owner of the data, so then we become responsible for that data, even though they have the data. There's that slippery slope that we could get in trouble that if the finger pointed at us that we gave that data out, even though it came from another source. You know what I mean? Like it's once it becomes into our house, then we're responsible for that data.
If we're discussing it with the same people that gave it to us, the same agency as.
I don't disagree with you, but I think there's a slippery slope that we could get in trouble.
That's why we talked to Matt. It's a good point.
Okay.
The questions about you can put a safety rail, you can't put it on a lower bunk, but you can do it on a tall single, if you will, an upper bunk. Yes.
Cricket suddenly.
Yeah. All right. Do we have any other questions? If you've asked a question and we haven't answered it yet, ask it again. The chat was moving really fast for a minute. I was trying to keep up, but sometimes I can't. And you can always reach out outside of this. You can always email John or any of us. We would be happy to help you. But are there any other questions that we can answer? Oh, another hand is raised. Michael Benson, do you have a question?
I do. I asked it earlier in the chat and it probably got scooted by, and that's okay. Trust me, it's not a problem. John, I know you weren't trying to push Google Voice and you weren't trying to be a Google sponsor. I get it. But if their stuff works, that's great. Do you have any experience with the different apps like Ring app or something like that? I've used that with a different foundation and it acts similarly. However, I don't know the funding pricing situation on that.
Yeah, I've not used anything other than Google Voice. I've had a Google Voice account personally for probably the better part of 7 or 8 or 9 years now. So I don't because it's free, because it works, because I think it's on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of ease of understanding, it's probably a 5 or a 6, 10 being the hardest, 1 being the easiest. I think it's, there's some work involved in understanding it and using it, but I don't have any experience with any other products, even in the work that I do professionally. I don't know. So
well, and I had used Google Voice with business applications, but when I went to work with a foundation, I was getting training, but it was not exactly clear how they wanted me to contact people. And I thought it was funny that they go, "Hey, contact them," and I use my cell phone. Bad idea.
Yeah. And Michael, if you've got links or anything, or even just names of, I'm happy to spend some time. I'm less than a year away from retirement, so they're not giving me a whole lot to do at work. So, I've got some downtime when I'm actually getting paid by who I work for. Happy to look in to see if there's another solution. I personally would be hard pressed to move it out of Google because I think one stop makes it easy. But if there's something out there that's just as free, I realize that's a silly statement, but just as free, certainly, and if it's easier in particular, certainly would be worth looking at, in my opinion. So.
Yep, you bet. And it's the Ring app, but it uses Google it tethers to an email. So the number tethers to an actual email, a singular. So you can't swap it over to someone else.
Gotcha. Yeah. So the Google Voice you can transfer over to a different number because you have to associate it with a cell phone. So Nicole, I see a hand raised.
Gotcha.
Nicole's frozen. Yeah, maybe Nicole's frozen.
I think she moved.
Yeah, I got you. Okay, there we go. I have a quick question for you. We have like quite a list of applications, and after Christmas we got like somebody on and said on Facebook and said, hey, there's this great organization in our area, and we've got like 80 applications in like 2 weeks, and we exploded. And so we obviously filled them all. And then I went to, call our applications and try to talk to them all. And a couple of them all of a sudden, and they needed the beds, but now I've gone back and recalled them. And a couple of them have gotten beds since then. How do you close those out? What do you close those?
Yeah, so your voice on this end, I don't know how well you're receiving this.
Yeah, where our close options
kind of distorted. Nicole, I think what I heard you ask was,
do you just close them out as undelivered, or what do you close them to?
No longer needed.
Yeah, just no longer needed. Yeah.
Am I making sense?
Yeah, I think with what John was going to say, the same thing. I think you were asking if you had people that had applied, and then when you got to them, they no longer needed the beds, or they've gotten beds.
Yeah.
Just close them out as no longer needed.
Yeah. Yeah. We close cases out for with the closest reason that we possibly can. And we had one today where we called and, well, I only need a mattress. Well, there's nothing in Salesforce it says, well, I only need a mattress. So we just close them as not applicable or not needed or whatever. I mean, so there's some latitude there. Nobody's going to go back, I don't think, and say, why did you close this case with this tag?
Not going to happen.
I was asking. Okay.
Yeah. Could I just clarify? There is no category called no longer needed. Just close it as bed not delivered, and in the comments put bed no longer needed.
Yeah, you can't comment in the bed application. There's no place to do that.
Thank you.
It has to be converted to a case to comment.
Yeah.
But you can if you're saying, John, if it's not a case, you can't comment.
Right, you can't. There's no commenting in bed applications. We convert everything to a case to close. It's just easier.
We convert everything to a case to close it too. So that would be the way to do it. Convert it to
so
a
there you can put a comment in, and again, nobody's gonna hold your feet to the fire as to why you close something with any reason other than whether you delivered a bed or not, because that's really all. If we delivered a bed, we need to know the inventory went out. But other than that, the reason nobody's gonna get on your case about it. So make it as accurate as you can.
And I agree with the comment in the comments about shutting down applications early. If you start to get a ton, it's okay to close them before you get overwhelmed so that they get that notice. And then open them back up when you can again. I think we found it's easier for people to wait to apply. So they'll get that notice saying you're out of inventory and they can apply again, than it is for people to apply and then wait a year for a bed, which has been the case in SHP before. So yeah, so manage that as you need. If you need to shut those applications down so that you can take care of what is there, then absolutely do it.
Yeah, that comes back to bandwidth, knowing what your bandwidth is, how many beds you're going to be able to build, and where you think you're going to be able to be, and then base that decision based on that. So, but yeah, shutting down is better than getting buried for sure. Absolutely.
You can also make some statement or a post on your Facebook page as to why you're shut down, and that if you're worried about the PR aspects of that. Amy, I've got to jump to another meeting, but
Okay.
thank you, everybody. 148 is a very good turnout.
Yeah. Recording will be on the dashboard in the next couple of days. You can find it there under videos.
There's a question in the how do we shut down? That's on in Salesforce, right on the right of the login page on Salesforce. There's a place there where you just say no longer accepting applications. So
Yes, in the chapter portal.
But take into consideration, it reads a little weird. It says open for applications, and it'll say yes, but you have to pick what you want. Like it'll flip flop, and it seems like it's a backward sentence. But
yeah. And again, if you have questions, reach out. I'll throw my email in the chat real quick, just so you know it's pretty obvious, but I'll throw it there in the chat. Feel free to reach out. I'll try to get back to you as quick as I can with answers. And
Yes.
happy to help you in any way that I can. So
Craig, did you have a last minute question while he's typing his email in there?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Craig from Kansas City. Just wanted to mention that we have some great partners in the community, like with Care Portal or others. I heard others mention that, you know, if the client needed a mattress or a single item, you know, that they had other materials, I'm able to reach out with those partners in the community for that, and they'll provide that need where we can't in some manners. So just wanted to mention that. I know Care Portal is getting ready to roll out. I think it's in 360 counties, but it's getting federal funding to potentially roll out to every county in the nation, to where social workers have means to put in requests, and it's you know, a great means of people that have needs to submit requests other than beds and everything else. So I just want to mention that, and I appreciate this meeting.
well, thank you.
Yeah, it's a great suggestion.
Quick question.
Okay.
I can't find the raising of the hand, but anyway, if someone, I'm closing somebody out, for instance, I had someone the other day that said, I no longer need this bed. So I closed them out. And then about a week later, they called me and said, I'm going to reapply. Is it best to reopen that one that's closed out, or let them reapply with a new case number?
Yeah, so I think absolutely reopen it. There's why put them back in the line again? You know, we don't.
Okay.
In fact, when we have people that we lose contact with or whatever, you know, we will reopen cases, and they'll jump to the head of the line if they put a request in. You know, we're 6 to 8 weeks right now, maybe 9 weeks to deliver a request that came in today. But somebody that we had closed because they said they didn't need it, or we couldn't get a hold of, if they contact us and say, oh yeah, I still need the bed, we don't make them wait until the end. We just deliver them essentially in the order. So yeah, reopen. I would always reopen.
Is there a time frame for that?
I don't think so. I think that really depends on you.
I usually reopen if there was.
Yeah, the system doesn't. I don't think the system cares at all. Salesforce doesn't care how old it is. So.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're right up coming on the 7 o'clock hour. So if there are no more pressing questions here at the end, then we will close this. I will get it downloaded and we'll get it uploaded to the dashboard. So watch for that in the next couple of days. You can share with your teams, or you can rewatch, and please reach out if you have any other specific questions or anything like that.
See, it is coming. See, there's the menu.
Hey,
it won't look like that, but it is coming.
Pushed in public, so now maybe it'll get a little extra push. And John, thank you.
If you give everybody JP's email address, we could probably flood it.
Hey, jp.wilson@shpbeds.org. Send it to
There you go.
Yes, thanks, John. This was awesome.
My
I
pleasure.
think the feedback was great. We had lots of people here, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks,
Yeah, I guess the
everybody,
last thing
for
I'll
listening.
say is don't
Yes.
hesitate to ask for help. Please don't struggle. Don't, a 5-minute phone call or a 5-minute typing of an email that solves a problem for you, that helps you do what you need to do for your community. Believe me, don't hesitate to ask. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So and mine is real simple. It's john.wright@shpbeds.org. So it's just JON. Yeah, there's no H. I don't care if
no
people
H.
pronounce the H. I don't get offended if anybody says John versus John, but there is no H in my name. So
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We love you, and we're so glad you're here. We appreciate
you.
you. Have a good night, and we'll see you next time.
All right.